Kathy Ann?
Oh, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry, I wasn't hearing anyone there. So good evening, my name is Kathy Ann Babb. I'm the Human Resources Manager with the Coral Reef and the Sandpiper Hotels. This evening, it is with pleasure that I welcome you to the 7th session of the Barbados Together webinar series. The focus of this session this evening will be on leadership in times of crisis. Now, generally, as leaders in the tourism industry, there's a certain amount of uncertainty that you will deal with on a daily basis. With the current global health crisis, that level of uncertainty has increased drastically. As a leader in your respective organization, it is during such time that your teams will look for you for guidance and reassurance. Now, this evening's session is being presented by Ms. Norma Shourie. Ms. Shourie is the founder and director of Catalyst Consultants and a certified management consultant. A specialist in change management and organizational development, Norma works with both public and private sector agencies, enhancing leadership capacity and teamwork in Barbados, throughout the Caribbean, and internationally. Her work in the tourism and hospitality sector includes being part of the team that developed the Barbados Tourism Master Plan and as a consultant with many tourism organizations. She's a skilled facilitator and trainer in participatory methodologies, and she has a genuine passion for working with people, helping people to be more effective in organizations, and assisting organizations to be more effective with their people. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Ms. Norma Shourie to conduct this evening's presentation.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I'm going to share my screen now. Great. It is really my pleasure to be here this afternoon, to be speaking with you all on something that is my passion. How do we as leaders work more effectively? And this is so true, especially in this time of crisis. We have been in stormy waters. We will continue to be in stormy waters, stormy seas, stormy skies. But there is something different. There is something different at the end of the tunnel, at the end of this time. And we need to think about what is our role as leaders in this time of crisis. So I start with you to really make the point that our world has literally been turned upside down. We who are, and I'm sure that many of you here are in the tourism, and in many aspects of the tourism sector, whether it is in hotels, restaurants, small businesses, small enterprises at all levels, in the distributive sector, in the supply sector, in the transportation sector with tours, the people who are helping our visitors, both the business visitors and our tourist visitors, to have a better time in Barbados. And that has been our past. But now our world has been turned upside down by this COVID-19 disruption. And it has really affected our GDP, because 40% of our GDP is linked to tourism and the hospitality sector. 30% of our Barbados workforce is directly employed in the tourism and hospitality sector. And that is one of the sectors that has been most severely impacted by the COVID-19 disruption. But there are emerging opportunities. And when I say disruption, I'm going to really ask us, is it disruption or destruction? Because a lot of people are thinking destruction. During this session, we are going to have an opportunity for you to ask questions. You can pose your questions to the panel, put them in the chat whenever you wish, and we will be taking the questions. We also have a couple of polls to ask you to share some of your views with us as we walk through. And then at the end, we ask you to just give some brief feedback on what has been most useful to you in this session. So as I move forward, I really highlight that we are living in a VUCA world. That is a term that is becoming more and more familiar to people. It's a world of the unknown. It's a world of moving parts. We are not certain what is coming around the corner. COVID has really tremendously created uncertainty and instability and ambiguity because we interpret and see things in different ways. But we recognize that business as usual will never come back. So what is it that we need to do as leaders, especially in this tourism and hospitality sector, to get our businesses back? I do not have all the answers. Let me be very clear, I'm not a guru, but what we will be exploring is what is it that we need to do as leaders to prepare ourselves for getting our businesses back and prepare our teams likewise. So I really take the word of one of our past chairman of the BHTA that really indicated that while COVID-19 has stripped us out down, we don't have any control over the circumstances that have been forced upon us with COVID-19. The decline in the travel and tourism industry has been across the globe. We don't have any control over that. What we do have control of is how we respond, how we control our faith and our direction, and how we keep the brightness and optimism alive, because there will be a time when we will rebound. And we have rebounded in the past in the tourism sector and in all of the economy from the many disasters that we have faced over the years. Maybe not some of them not as severe as COVID, but certainly we have had to face many changes with 9/11, with SARS, with Zika, and we have been able to pivot and come again stronger. And that is what we are looking for at this point. So as I look at the things, we recognize that as leaders, we are tremendously important in helping our sector get back together. Yes, government is important, very, very important, when we have appreciated many of the initiatives that have been taken through government and government-related agencies and through the private sector. In fact, this Barbados Together initiative is a tremendous one to help us to get our tourism sector back on track. But if we are going to move forward, we as leaders need to be more effective in what we do. We need to be able to navigate these turbulent waters, these turbulent times, not only the boat, the organization, the ship, but we also need to navigate with our people, our crew on board, and working effectively with them, and the passengers, the visitors, the tourists who come to our shores. So this is the challenge that we have as we are trying to get our tourism sector back on track. And this is why this Barbados Together initiative is helping both leaders and others to think differently about how we move forward. And I want to do that at two levels. I want to look at it from the organizational level as well as from the people side. So in the organizational level, we know that there are many ways things that we need to do to get to recover our organizations. We need to use technology more effectively. And when I say using technology, many of our tourism entities have already been using the technology in simple things like in the restaurants or in the hotels, using tablets to take orders so that they go straight to the kitchen. Simple things like that. And some have not yet adopted that technology. We are looking now at using technology more effectively in terms of our reservation systems, our monitoring of the visitors and the people who come to our various attractions. There are so many options that we can utilize at this time, and it is what is it that we are planning, Establishing new protocols. Well, I don't need to say very much about the health and safety protocols because that is going to be a major, significant effort at all levels. Establishing the protocols for the protection, first of all, of our staff and also for our visitors. And building that protocol, building our countries as a safe place for tourists, for visitors to come to, for business people to come to, because they know that we are following these protocols very strictly. But within all of this, how are we innovative, creative, thinking outside the box, thinking about what we can do to pivot, to move through the destructiveness into disruption, which is allowing us to move into a different space and actually perform better. So I'm going to ask you, as we look at the people side, I want you, and we're going to put up a poll, and I'm going to ask you, what is it that you recognize as a leader that you need to be in this time? More interactive, more imaginative, more decisive, more adaptable, more flexible, more supportive? I'm going to ask you to select your 2 top responses, and Jamila, I'm going to ask you to launch the poll so that we can actually see it. Yes, thank you. Okay, so I'm asking each of the participants if you would please just identify your 2 top responses to this poll. What is it that you recognize that you need to do to be more effective? Okay, and as I'm looking at the screen and trying to decipher the screen, we have 22 people. I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about this. And as I indicated in this leadership webinar, it's not just me telling you stuff, it's me challenging you and us learning from each other as we share questions afterwards. So we have about 40, that's almost half of our participants. And it seems to me as if one of the thing that is jumping out most is that people recognize that we need to be more imaginative, which has to do with our creativeness or strategic thinking or thinking outside the box. We cannot do business as usual. The second thing that is emerging is that we need to be more flexible. And that is one of the things that we in this sector have always been thinking about, how we can do things differently, yes, but sometimes we are not enough flexible. Too many of our ways of doing things have been developed many decades ago. I can remember some of them. And have we really changed? Have we taken the time to step back and look at things differently? And therefore, we are looking, therefore, at being more adaptable, which is linking to the flexible. But so we have recognized that in this time, we as leaders need to take a very important step to find ways of addressing these 2 things. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing the results. Sorry, could you stop sharing the results, please, Jamila? So we can go back. Okay. Sorry, I need to go back to the presentation. Okay. So, sorry. Oh, sorry. Was I not sharing the results? Yes. Sorry. Okay, we're just trying to. Jamila, I'm not here. Okay, great. So one of the things that we need to do on the people side is to be more responsive to people, to be dealing with our team members in more positive ways, to be able to have a better understanding. Our sector has been terribly affected by the by COVID-19. We have had layoffs across the sector. We have had people, and that has tremendously impacted our families and set people spiraling into a sense of depression and despair. And they need us as leaders to keep us focused and refocused because of the tremendous level of uncertainty that there is. We as leaders need to think about how do we manage as we are working with our team members, as we are connecting with our team members. What are we doing to help them to think about their work-life balance? Because we are asking a number of them to work from home, and many of my colleagues, both the consultants and people working in many organizations, feel as if we are working even more. How do we keep our balance? I can tell you one thing, and this is a story I tell all the time. My cupboards were looking at me and saying, oh, good, we've got some time to have you to look after us. And they're looking at me and making me feel very guilty because I just have not been able to find the time to do many of the things that I would like. But one of the things that I do is that I have an evening ritual, which I try to carry out most evenings. That is to lie on my hammock on my balcony, looking over the St. George Valley and just relaxing. Because if we as leaders and as people who are working hard do not keep that balance, we cannot therefore be productive and effective. And upskilling our teams, this is the perfect time for us to be upskilling our teams, for us to plan the kind of training that we know is required. And I know a number of organizations who have started to do that. People are glad to come together after the lockdown. Yes, they have to keep their social distancing, but the upskilling is also through the technology. I have upskilled myself in using our technology, using the virtual space much more effectively to do the training. So in our organizations, these are some of the things that we need to be focused on the people side. But in all of this process, we as we look at our people, we really need to understand what is happening in their lives, in their selves, in their emotions. And I would like to share with you one of the popular tools that I use. This is the change curve, for which many of you will be already familiar. On the left-hand side, it shows what happens when there's a dramatic change. There's a shock, there's a denial, there's a panic, there's a dread, there's the fear, there's the blame of things that are outside of our control. But then when we can't blame the things outside of our control, we blame and get annoyed at the people who are in our personal and workspace. That is the negative side of change. That is something that we can anticipate whenever there is a change. And people reach to the level of depression and despondency. But what we want to do is to help our people to be thinking differently, to accept, yes, it is going to be a new world. There is no question about it. So what is it that we need to do differently? We ourselves need to be looking and testing, experimenting, and just what I said about the organizational activities, thinking differently about what we are doing. And of course, maintaining that sense of optimism and hope. And let me tell you, maintaining that optimism and hope when the skies are dark and the seas are rough is difficult, but that is the challenge that we have as leaders. And that leads me to another level of change that I also use, because it's not only the change in terms of the times, it is the change in terms of our own leadership styles. What did I say? Our own leadership styles. And of course, I teach the situational leadership model. Unfortunately, many of us have been accustomed to a control modality of leadership. Get it done, direction and control. Does this provide an opportunity for us to relook at how we can delegate, about how we can support our team members more effectively, about where we need to coach our team members who may lack the confidence and sometimes the competence to do the things that we would like them to do. But there is a tremendous need for leaders to utilize this time to make that shift in their leadership styles and to consider what we can do more collaboratively that will make our organizations better. All the things that we've been preaching about as senior leaders to the middle-level leaders, and the middle-level leaders have been preaching to their team members. Let us take an opportunity to look at ourselves and operate differently. And that is really part of the challenge of change, not in terms of changing just the organization, but understanding what is happening in our change in ourselves and also in our team members, and also what we need to do in our leadership styles. And that is the big challenge in this time of crisis that we need to do as leaders.
Norma?
One of the key things, yes?
If I can just interject here a minute, I'm not sure if you want to take your questions at the end, or if you're open to taking questions. If there's something relevant
to what we're saying, I'd be happy to have it.
Okay, we have a question from Delores Brathwaite, and she's asking essentially, what do you see as the difference between being adaptable and being flexible? You were just speaking about our leadership styles and our approaches.
Okay, very, very good question. I think that they're probably on the continuum of flexibility, adaptability and flexibility. I don't have my Googles. I'm not going to actually give you the clear definition of each, but being adaptable means that we need to look at that situation and say, do I need to go around it, or above it, underneath it? Being flexible is that as I am moving forward, do I need to shift? Do I need to possibly go in a different direction? I think that I'm not sure that there's a very significant distinction in both, because they're both in the same parameter of I need to be able to be to do things differently. And actually that speaks to one of the points that I'll be coming to in terms of being agile. So thank you very much for that question. The key thing is that we need to recognize that moving from the left side of negativity to the right side of positivity on the change curve requires us to take a different mindset. And that mindset is also something that we as leaders, that we need to look at. And that is actually leading into what one of my colleagues, Tony Olton, did last week, Wednesday. Some of you may have attended the webinar on surfing the waves of change. And he made the point that in order to surf the waves of change, most of us are not surfers. I could never be out on that ocean. But when you look at how that surfer operates, that surfer is able to balance, is able to move, has been able to have and flexibility to keep afloat, to keep focused. Why? Because they have skill and they have focus and they have determination and optimism that they can succeed. And if they get thrown off, they know how to get back on. And a lot of that comes, and he used that as the metaphor for us being more focused in terms of our emotional intelligence, being able to think and have our thoughts. And I'm going to go back to the same change curve. If we have a continuing negative thought, if we're going to say things are not going to improve, there are no planes coming, there'll be a level of negativity and frustration and fear, which means that we are not willing to take steps. If we change that thought to say, wait a minute, this too shall end. There is going to be sunlight. There are silver lining behind the clouds. There is a way, a time that the storm is going to end. I can therefore be optimistic, and therefore I can take specific steps forward. What we think, how we feel, governs how we act. And as leaders, we need to be aware of this in ourselves, and because our team is taking the direction from us. And that is why that flexibility, that adaptability, that willing to change is so important for leaders. So I just want to give you about 6 tips, which I have found to be particularly helpful as I have worked with leaders across the sector and in many different organizations. The first tip is that we as leaders need to be strategic. And those of you who have been involved in my sessions know that I'm a fan of Stephen Covey. And one of the 7 habits of highly effective people is beginning with the end in mind. Yes, we will begin, we will rebound as a sector, we will rebound as a nation. Barbados is already punching way above its weight in terms of the international community. We will rebound if we can keep that bigger vision. But what does that require? Because if we're going to rebound, we have to show ourselves, we have to differentiate ourselves. How are we going to be that top of the line destination? What is the quality of service that we need to be able to provide? What do we need to do to get that service at all levels? What are the opportunities for collaboration? What are the opportunities to operate and do things differently? Where are the ways that we can be innovative, looking ahead, thinking outside the box, looking at different, as one of my colleagues indicated, thinking about our activities in a very positive and creative way, seeing how we can make and enable our visitors to have a very unique experience in Barbados, that they say, yes, we feel safe because we know that they're taking all the precautions, and there are things that we can do because it's not just sand, sea, and sun, but there are many other things that are going to allow us to be in immersive experiences, which are going to be very interesting and positive. And the time will come, but we cannot have those unless from this time we are beginning to plan and move forward. The second thing is directly relating to that. It's being decisive. As leaders, we cannot afford to be paralyzed with the fear of what is going to happen. Yes, we do not know the future. But let us look at the risk. There's so many risk analysis modules and frameworks that we can use. There are many consultants like myself who can support you in thinking through some of the risks for your aspects of your business. And we need to be able to make decisions. We will make wrong decisions. We will make mistakes. But if we don't make the decision, that is more disastrous than indecision is more disastrous than making a decision. And we need to be able to pivot, and that's where the adaptability and flexibility comes in. Yes, we are moving down a path, but we see the need to do something different. Yes, we have been providing sit-in restaurants, but are there ways in which we can offer food to our visitors who will be coming back in different locations, in different ways? Restaurants, business places, and the destinations. What is it that we need to do to get our destination activities, other people aware of them? How do we videotape them? How do we get them out on the social media? Yes, we need to be decisive in building our brands and building back. And in all of that, we need to maintain our linkage with people and our contact with our team members. And this is my second poll, which I will ask Jamila to launch. Jamila? So we are launching the poll. The second poll is, what is it that you are doing? How would you rate your own efforts to connect with your team members in this time of crisis? Are you doing it very well? Are you doing it reasonably well, but you could improve? Are you not at all doing anything well? And therefore, you definitely need to improve the engagement. And are you not doing anything at all? And we have at the moment, let me see, just a few people. I'm going to ask people to enter the poll. We have 45 people who have responded, almost half. And most people are saying, yes, we are connecting with our teams reasonably well. And some people are saying, yes, and we are connecting and maintaining the contact with them very well. And that is extremely encouraging. We have 61% in, and it's more or less remaining steady that most of you are saying, yes, we're doing it reasonably well. More people coming in and saying, yes, we're doing it very well. And that is very encouraging. But I'm going to say to you that your perception of what you're doing, and I'm not saying I don't know who is on the call and therefore I can't make a judgment, but one of the big feedback that we have got from the hospitality workers across the board is that they are disappointed in the level of engagement and communication that they have from their the members of their staff, their leaders. And I really encourage you to think through, what is it that you are doing to communicate, to connect, to engage, to follow up with your team members in a positive way, in ways that make them feel that they are valued. Yes, they are laid off. And in fact, one supervisor said to me, well, I'm laid off, so I don't see why I should bother to connect with people. It's not my job. It's not my job. No, because when that person is coming back to work and working along with you, hopefully that will happen. What is it that you want them to feel in that relationship with you? Okay, so I'm going to close off the results now. We have got most people at the reasonably well, and that is very positive. And for those who are not doing so well, you need to be thinking about what we can do differently. So my third tip is that we need to be authentic. And I put up a big wall, a block building wall of trust to enable us that we are breaking down the negatives through trust, because we recognized how important it is for us to be authentic, to communicate with our team. And notice I put communicate. It's not just one communicate, folks. It's communicate, 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 communicate. And when you have done as much communication as you can, people will still complain that you didn't communicate enough. But I'm really encouraging you, for those who feel that you're doing reasonably well, to think through even more, what are other ways in which I can connect with my team? But that communication needs to be honest. It needs to be honest, and it needs to provide an opportunity for you to be open, to remain open, to listen to your team members, because they are struggling. People are having it really, really difficult. Yes, people are on layoff and getting a portion of their salary at this point. And we are going to be looking to see what will happen in the short term and in the medium term. But the most important thing is if people feel that they're cared for. And I want to share on this an experience that I had with a friend of mine who was stranded on one of the cruise ships, not off Barbados, off of another country. She was stranded for a couple months on the cruise ships because they could not get off the cruise ship as part of the crew. And she said that the difference between what she was experiencing on her cruise ship and as she spoke with her colleagues on other cruise ships, was that her leaders really made an effort to connect with their team members, to check in on a daily basis, to find ways of sharing interesting experiences, positive experiences, fun experiences, so that it lifted people's spirits and people felt connected. I've had the experience of working with an organization here, and what is wonderful is using the Zoom, and people are so excited to see each other when they're being on lockdown. It makes a tremendous difference. And then related to being authentic is embracing vulnerability, knowing when you and being open to say, I don't know, I don't have the answer. I will try to find it out, but maybe there is no answer, but we will keep you informed. And being vulnerable is not being weak, but being vulnerable is part of your authenticity. And my fourth tip is being agile. And we have spoken about being flexible, being adaptable, recognizing that there's going to be resistance whenever we have change, whenever we are moving into new protocols, whenever people are coming back to doing things using technology better and differently, there is going to be resistance. And if we say to resistance, oh, you should not do that, oh, you should just fit in, no, we have to understand that the resistance is particularly people are feeling fearful because they're not sure if they can cope, and therefore they pull back. And so your being flexible and being agile is also fostering that desire for change, for us to get back on track as a nation, as an industry. And the last one on this one on being agile is planning for business continuity. Well, I know a lot of tourism business always have your emergency plan. None of us could have anticipated COVID, but I can tell you that now you are even more clear of having that plan in place and having that business continuity plan. And there are many of my colleagues and consultants who specifically are focused on business continuity planning and can assist you on getting your organizations thinking through what you need to put in place even at this time. The fifth one is being caring. And the example that I've used before is about our Prime Minister who was the Barbados Prime Minister, who was interviewed on CNN by Christine Amanpour. And she said, number of female leaders around the world, what has made the difference? Because a number of your countries seem to be managing and weathering the storm quite well. And our Prime Minister answered, because we care. Now, being caring is so important at every leadership level. And it has nothing to do with country, and it has nothing to do with level, whether you're a senior level CEO, a supervisor, middle manager, doesn't matter whether you're male or female. But when people can see that you are supporting them, when people can see that you are seeking to counter the crippling emotions, there are emotions of fear, anxiety, despondency, and you are helping them to say, okay, what's another way of looking at it and feeling about it? When you yourself are emotionally intelligent and therefore being more receptive to your team members and being more positive toward them, that is what is going to make the difference as our industry rebounds. It is going to rebound, but it is going to depend on leaders who are not just focused on getting the work done and controlling the work to be done, but are emotionally intelligent and are able to build the resilience and the ability of our people to move forward. And then, of course, there is an opportunity to be mindful. Now, when I said mindful, I found this graphic and I thought it was so apt. Is our mind full of all the things that we are running around doing and have to do on our to-do list and are frazzled and are frantic and are feeling stretched ourselves? Or are we mindful? Are we taking the time to shift our mindset, to care for ourselves, to build our relationships, to develop our inner strength, to draw on our inner resources and our power, to draw on the divine presence, which can help us to think through things differently, which can provide ideas that we may never have thought possible because we have taken the time to be silent, to listen. Same words, very connected. Being silent allows us to listen to the inner being, the divine spirit, the greater power that is available to us to guide us. And one of my favorite, to live in gratitude. I cannot say how blessed we are. In fact, I say it all the time, to live in an island and to live in this beautiful island of Barbados. We are so fortunate. Yes, there's a lot that we need to change, but we focus too much on the complaining and not enough on helping us to see how fortunate we are. And to what extent have we in our teams helped people to say, okay, yes, it's negative. What are we grateful for today? I start off all my workshops with that. What are we grateful for? Because there is a lot. And if we can be more mindful, we will find that in this time of crisis, in this sector or any other sector, we are able to move through the turbulence and to guide our teams to be more effective. So, in summary, and I end with this, as a leader, in these chaotic times, in these times of crisis, in these times when things are really has sent you in a spiral of despondency, what do you need to do as a leader? And in summary, I want to just highlight, we need to be strategic, think outside the box, be creative, be innovative. Find ways of looking at things, go online, see what other countries are doing, and what can we adapt from Barbados, what can we share from the Caribbean and from the world. The second one, be decisive, take responsibility, do things, make decisions. We will make mistakes, but if we take firm decisions, things will work out one way or the other. Be authentic. Be trustworthy and trusting. And when you are trusting and trustworthy, then you are able to build better relationships with your team members. Being agile, being flexible, being adaptable, being able to pivot, being able to look at things from different lenses, being able to see our business in different ways, being able to see how we can deliver our business in different ways. Does it mean that we have to provide different meals in different ways? Does it mean that we have to showcase our businesses through different media? Be caring. Bottom line, deal with our people in ways that are positive, empathetic, inspiring, because without our people, we will not reach our bottom line. And at the base of it all, take care of ourselves. Be mindful. Allow our time to relax, to breathe. Taking time to breathe. We are fortunate in a country that we're in a country where we can breathe. We can breathe. We can breathe and be grateful for what we have. And we are going to build back this tourism and hospitality business to meet the challenges of a different world and a new tomorrow. And on that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to end, and I thank you for being part of this discussion and sharing with me some of my passion about working more effectively with people and helping people work more effectively with organizations. Okay, thank you very much. And so I'm asking you, if you, as we are closing off, we are going to have some time for question and answer, but I would like to ask you to share things that might have been most impactful for you in terms of what may have provided some insights, what helped you to understand things better, what is it that you might have learned, what is it that you understand more effectively, as we have covered some of these topics today. And at this point in time, I would like to then leave the question open to question and answers for our, to respond to some of the issues that surfaced in this presentation.
Okay, thank you, Norma. We will now move to the question and answers segment. Very insightful presentation from you, Norma. You've encouraged us to focus on how we can become effective leaders. I think the key thing for me there is that the focus needs not only to be on the operation, but also on leading our people during these uncertain times. The first question that we have here, the person is asking, Norma, how do you speak to the point of an employee of a small company who has not been contacted by their employer? How do you manage those emotions, as you said earlier, especially when you have to return to the office to work with them?
I'm sorry, the question is from the perspective of whom about the employee? You mean the employer to the employee or a friend of the employee?
No, this is the employee that's trying to, what the employee is putting over is that they have not been contacted by their employer. So they want to know how do they manage their emotions, especially when they have to return to the office to work with the employer.
And that is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing in our organizations, because many leaders have not gone through this webinar. I wish more would. I wish we could influence not only me, but so many of our colleagues who are working with leaders could influence our leaders to really just take that responsibility in their leadership. Because if you don't take that responsibility, you end up with that team member who is going to come back to work disgruntled. And however, I'm going to say to the team member that you have a choice on how you turn up. If you listen to Tony Alton surfing the word of the waves of change, we would recognize that in this very volatile, chaotic period, we have a choice. We can either be overwhelmed by it and annoyed and angry about what's not being done by others who should be doing what they need to do, or we can say, you know what, at the end of the day, I am the only one that has responsibility for my feelings. And you would see it, the power of choice comes over on our CBC, those of who watch CBC News, Evening News, the power of choice. I have a choice about how I turn up and deal with people. So if my employer has not turned up positively, has not maintained contact with me, they may not have got my message. They may feel as if they have nothing to say, and therefore, rather than having nothing to say and saying nothing, they don't make contact with me. But when I go into the office, what is the stance that I will take? And I would really encourage that employee to say, you know what? Let bygones be bygones. Let things go. Let me not get so caught up with my negative emotions about this that I turn up in a negative way, because it's only going to make me feel more negative. Let me turn up in a positive way. And let my employer know that I wish that they had contacted me, but let me turn up prepared to do the best that I can do. That's a very, very good question. And I'm so glad it was raised, because it helps our leaders to recognize what impact your non-communication has on your employees and your team members.
Thank you, Norma.
Go ahead. Yes.
I guess from an HR perspective, I think at the time that this crisis occurred, for lack of a better way of putting it, it probably hit a lot of our leaders for six. And a lot of persons were probably scrambling or not 100% sure how to move forward. And I think that this session is very timely because you've given some tips in terms of really ensuring that you keep the connection with your team members. Reach out to persons, touch base with them, see how things are going, and give them some feedback in terms of how you're going to move forward. I see a second question here. Can empathy be learned? It is so needed as a soft skill, especially in crisis situations, but lacking in many leaders. What is your opinion, Norma?
Yes, empathy can be learned. There's some people, and because I do a lot of stuff with personality and different personalities, there's some people who have a preference for making decisions on the basis of feeling and are always putting themselves in other people's situations. And there are people who have a preference for thinking. That's in the MBTI framework, and who like to look at things from a very logical, black and white perspective. But those people who have a preference for thinking can learn. But you know something? You will not change until you first recognize that that is your go-to. That is your immediate way, your natural way of doing things is not a way that is empathetic. And if you begin to recognize that, and you have the desire to do it differently, yes, you can learn it. But there's so many ways. There is a colleague of mine who has developed a program called Think Empathy. That is Cheryl Gittins. I'll call her out. Think Empathy, because if your whole mindset impacts how you respond to people. But it starts from your desire to have a better connection with them. And that doesn't mean that you are going to, it doesn't mean that you are going to not think, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to make hard decisions, but you are going to also say, what can I say to this person to help to alleviate this specific difficulty and understanding that they're facing at the moment. So you can learn it, and it is learned by learning words, by practicing, by stopping yourself and saying, wait a minute, that's coming from a place of right and wrong. Should I in this time ask a question? Listen. Empathy is listening, not just having a solution and being ready to move on.
Okay, thank you very much, Norma. I see a very interesting question coming up next. This person is asking, how do you treat employees who prefer not to be contacted and provide no means of contact when asked?
I don't know that I think, obviously, if you cannot contact them and they don't want to be contacted at this time and they're in the hospitality sector, when the time comes for you to select who you're going to bring back, that will then help you to make a determination around that. And that is why we are having these sessions with employees that's why the Barbados Together is doing a whole series of sessions with employees to help employees to think through how can they operate differently. Now, I would ask that person who does not want to be contacted, it may be that on a personal level, they just say they want a break from everything, or maybe there was so much negativity that they experience in their workplace that they don't want to have that part of them. And so I can't give a definitive answer. Well, obviously, if you can't contact them, you can write them a letter and they will get the letter. But why do you need to contact them? If they don't want to make themselves available for the communication, you need to also accept and not put a negative spin on it. They may not be want to be contacted because they may have had a death in the family and they're dealing with so many stuffs. Listen to me, there is so much abuse, child abuse, spousal abuse, partner abuse that is happening because people have been closed up. We do not know. And sometimes if a person needs to be able to just protect themselves, they need to go into their shell so that they can survive. So don't put a negative on it. Be open, but there's always the post, and it still works. Thank the Lord for a good postal service. Send them the post, and then when time comes, have the discussion about their not being willing to be participating in this process. Don't jump to judgment. Part of your caring is to recognize that people are coming from many different perspectives. Okay.
Thank you, Norma.
I'm sorry, as an HR person, Kathy, I would want to have some of your comments on this.
Well, I'm smiling because, Norma, that's a challenge that I have been encountering during this closure period. Just prior to the closure, I mean, periodically you do try to encourage your employees to update their contact details with you. I have this standing thing that during the onboarding and the orientation, I remind them that it is their responsibility to ensure that the contact details are kept current. I say to them, now, when you got this job, you provided us with lots of contact numbers to reach you. You gave us your number, your mommy's neighbor, and in some cases, you gave us the neighbor's neighbor, the neighbor's number. So you have to make sure you keep your information current. But on a serious note, it has been a little challenge because I've been trying to reach out to some of our employees too, and I've recognized that the numbers are no longer current. So then I've had to find department heads to say, well, can you send me an updated contact list? Or I've even had to use other employees to say, well, I've been trying to reach this person. Do you happen to have a number for that person? If you speak to them, please ask them to get in contact with me. And then there are certain things that you definitely don't want your employees to miss out on. So yes, the post is reliable. I can attest to the fact that it's reliable, and you can receive your stuff in 3 days. One of the other initiatives we've used is to try to create a staff blog and encourage employees to log on to that blog on a daily basis so that they get official and timely communication. So it is a challenge, and I would want to encourage employees to try and update the records as much as possible with your employers.
And so, and that's another point of judgment, because you have not been able to reach that employee, could be that those contact information has been changed. Not that they're not taking your phone calls, but they're not receiving the phone call. Their phone might have been damaged. They may not have been, well, of course you can receive the cell phone calls regardless from another cell phone, but you never know, their cell phone might be damaged. So let us not jump to judgment. Let us keep an open mind, but have that discussion.
And you don't only want to contact them in times of crises, but you might want to contact them for well wishes. You might want to contact them to say happy birthday. You might want to say congrats on the birth of the new baby boy or girl. So it's important that we have the contact information for our team members. This attendee has indicated, Norma, I think the seminar is a little later than one would have needed. So we have to do some damage repair.
Yes, and let me just put it this way. There's so many things that we would have liked to have done earlier. No question about it. But you know when is the best time to plant a tree? Today. So we have done it today, and it will be available. And therefore, whichever company it is, if this is something that you have benefited from, feel free. There are not only myself, but there are a number of us other consultants and trainers who would be happy to work along with your teams as your teams are coming back out of the lockdown. And in the hospitality sector, yes, things have not yet opened back fully to the visitors and guests, but there is so much work that is going on. That's one of the things I'd wanted to say. There is so much work that needs to be done to raise the standard of our properties, to get our staff trained up. And I know that you can attest to this, Kathy Ann, that there's so much work that needs to be done. So it's never too late to have some of those discussions around leadership, around accountability, about teamwork, about understanding emotional intelligence, and around managing change.
Okay, thank you, Noreen.
I see another question here. How do we let our leaders know
that's correct,
that this characteristic is lacking in them, and how do we start that conversation? And I think that it's interesting, because I've just been doing a series of leadership, online leadership webinars. And that is one of the things. There are people that turn up at a session and listen, and then they go back and they don't necessarily do what they think, what they say that they recognize they need to do. And you know what? None of us can change another person. We can only change ourselves. We can influence other people. And so part of it is helping that person to awaken. And another change model is the ADKAR model, building the awareness of the need to change and the desire to change before you build the knowledge and ability and reinforce it. But the desire is something that we as leaders do not spend enough time on and give enough time to our colleagues to help them to understand the why behind the change that they need to make in their leadership styles as well as in their technical work.
Okay. Another question here, Norma. Have you developed any customer service related sessions to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic period? We are now dealing with the new normal.
Okay, and I should say not just me. I mean, I've done many customer service related activities over my many years of working in the hospitality industry, no question about it. But the team that I have has done many different things. And what is wonderful about this Barbados Together series is one of the things that's going to be specifically addressed is customer service, because it's not just thinking about how do I meet the need, how do I serve the customer, but what are the customers' need at this time, and are we prepared? And I would like to say that whenever I do customer service training, I recognize that it's not just the external customer, it is the internal customer. Our relationships with our team members, our colleagues, the people that we report to, the people that report to us are all part of that internal customer service chain. We cannot deliver excellent customer service unless we are really paying attention to all the linkages in that chain and the relationships in that chain. I came across a word that I was amazed about because I'd never heard the word, flexomania. And flexomania is the ability of people to be hospitality oriented, to be outgoing and helpful to other people. And it is a quality that we have in Barbados that we need to build on. It's something that people who have come to our shores have recognized in us. Yes, we can improve, no question about it, but we have the capacity. But our people do not recognize how important that is. And they get very annoyed when their supervisors, when their managers are treating them poorly, then they just don't care. And that is that customer service chain, the internal customer service chain and relationships. That my passion is, how do I help our leaders deal with that more effectively?
Okay, thank you, Norma.
Great.
The next question, well, this person was speaking about not being able to contact, not being able to contact the employee. This person indicated that they were referring specifically to how do you deal with a case where a person refused to give a contact number.
Yes.
I guess I can speak to this. Like I said earlier, it is very essential that we are able to reach out to our employees. Again, a lot of people think that your employer is only calling for negative or for negative reasons. You're calling to tell me come out to work, I don't want to come out to work on my off day, and so on. But it's critical that we're able to work with our team and we're able to respond to the needs of our teams and the needs of the business. And you can only do that if you're able to reach the employee. Like I said, when the employee engaged in the contract of employment with you, they provided you with the contact details, and it is expected that that person will continue the contact details throughout the period of the employment relationship. So that sounds as though that's something you need to discuss with the employee and HR. The next question, Norma, what would you say about a boss being too friendly with staff and having favorites and giving them more opportunities than others?
It's very interesting, that question, because that was one issue that we dealt with explicitly in the leadership training that I conducted just yesterday. The whole question of building a team and a leader being fair. That's not to say that you do not prefer some people to do something than another, but being fair and not using favoritism. In fact, I asked them to identify what is it they recognized that they needed to avoid instead of what they needed to avoid if they wanted to be an effective team leader. And one of the persons said gossip, and another person said favoritism, because that really undermines the team spirit. And if we are going to be effective in these times are already difficult. People are already on edge. You do not need to create more dissonance and disaffection. Now, there's friendly and there's being too friendly. There's no question about it. One can cross the line, and some lines are very firm with some people and not with others. And all I would say to you, to leaders, is that being friendly is important. Being too friendly is actually very counterproductive. Not very, can be counterproductive depending on how it's handled. But you see, what I might see when I'm counseling somebody or coaching somebody or dealing with somebody in a different, who is going through a difficult situation, another person may see that as being too friendly, when in fact I'm building that dialogue and rapport to help that person. But that being too friendly could also be sexual harassment. And let me just be very clear on that. There is no excuse for sexual harassment. And sexual harassment often is from males to females, but it is sometimes from females to males, or females to females, or males to males. There's no question about it. And that is not being too friendly. That goes over the line.
Okay, Norma. What I would add to that from an HR perspective, in situations where you have situations rather where the employee perceives the boss as being too friendly with staff and having favorites and giving persons more opportunities than others, it really creates a challenge in the working environment. It impacts on persons' ability to perform. It is something that we as leaders need to be, as I see a participant have indicated here, we need to be mindful. You need to be cognizant of your behavior in terms of how you deal with your employees. Ensure that you deal with your employees fairly and across the board. And the important thing is that decisions that you make, it must be decisions that are made because it's an operational requirement. That's really and truly what needs to be focused. Of course, we also want to focus on our employees and try to create an environment that is nurturing for the employees. But you have to be cognizant that when you create that unfair balance, or employees perceive that unfair balance, it impedes the productivity of the individual, and it impacts tremendously on the ability of the team to function.
Absolutely, and that links back to what I said about being authentic and being transparent. When people know that you are fair and authentic and transparent, and you make a difficult decision that affects one person, they know it's not just for them, but it's for everyone. But this favoritism and letting some people off the hook is something that leaders, we cannot. Let's take the opportunity to make a shift as leaders to be more effective in this new era. It is going to be a new era of hospitality. There is an opportunity to pivot and refocus and refocus ourselves. Okay.
Okay. The next question, I think we have to be cognizant of time. We may be running out of time here. So I'll take these final two questions here. Will we be encouraging employers to train staff before we fully open, so it will be better understood what should be done and how?
And I would say that's in your ballpark, Kathy-Ann.
I would say definitely a yes. I think these webinar series came out of the Human Resources Development Committee for the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, BTMI, and the ministry. We definitely, this is not business as usual. We definitely have to look at how the individual hotels, well, how we as a destination responds to this crisis, so that we are presented to our clientele, so that we're making our clientele confident that Barbados as a destination is focusing on their health, their safety, while not losing those characteristics that are unique to the Barbadian people, the Barbadian destination. That's simply our warmth, our friendliness as people. So to answer that question, yes, we are encouraging training. Coming out of these webinars, following these, there will be a series of training initiatives that will be put together. I believe you will find out a bit more about that in some comments as we close. And I know that each hotel also is focusing on their own protocols. The hoteliers, the union, and the ministry are also looking at safety protocols for the reopening of the industry. You will hear more on that as we get closer to that point. That's as much as I think that I can say at this stage, but I know that each hotel is really looking at their operations, looking at employee safety, looking at guest safety, looking at what do we need to do to ensure that departments can now function post-COVID, what changes are needed, so what trainings we need to do with the employees, how do we revise our standards and go forward from there. So yes,
absolutely,
there will be training nationally and at the individual property levels.
Thank you. And I see one final question here, which is, I think, a very important one too. How do you deal with a manager who believes that showing empathy to team members is showing weakness? And you know what? Unfortunately, people have identified being able to be showing feelings and emotions as weakness. It's a cultural thing, and we have to get over it. But all I can say to the person whose manager is operating like that, to ask them the question, which would you rather have? An employee who is supportive and goes the extra mile, or one who just toes the line? And most of them will say the one who goes the extra mile, and the one who is supportive, and the one you can depend on. And that does not come by just maintaining a standoff perspective, but really taking the time to understand where that employee is coming from and giving that person praise and understanding how what is affecting that person's feelings at a particular time. Empathy is so important in leadership, and if only our leaders would practice that more, we would be able to be more resilient as in our organizations and in our country as we move forward. So that actually is a good point to end in terms of what I wanted to get across in this session. And I really appreciate the feedback from people.
Thank you very much, Norma. I'll share a point here from one of the participants. She says, thank you. It was an excellent seminar. So at this stage, I will now hand over to Mrs. Gail Headley-Lowe, the operations manager from the BHTA, who will give us some comments before we close out this evening.
Good afternoon, everyone. Webinar attendees, panelists, moderator, thank you. It was a fantastic session. I want to thank everyone, all the participants, for staying the course with us this evening in session 7 of the Barbados Together webinar series. I'm sure you enjoyed it. And I also want to apologize on behalf of Jeffrey, who's the new chairman of the BHTA, and also one of the active members of the HRD committee, and Gail Springer. Both of them unfortunately could not be with us today, but they're very instrumental in bringing the series to you. For those of you who joined us for the first time, welcome. Just to let you know, this series is an initiative of the Human Resource Development Committee, one of the 5 committees within the National Tourism Task Force. And that task force was formed by the Minister of Tourism and International Transport in April. And the goal of that committee, or the role of that committee, is to provide online learning sessions to reskill, retool, and upskill all frontline workers within the tourism and hospitality sector, whether you work in accommodation, whether you work in the restaurant sector, whether you're a vendor, DTS, doesn't make a difference. Whatever sector you're in, tourism or hospitality, this session is for you. It will also assist you in dealing with the challenging period posed by COVID. And I'm sure Norma's session today was one of those sessions that would help you understand leadership in times of change. The webinar series is just one of several training initiatives, as Kathy alluded to, that will continue after these sessions. I think those sessions will dovetail with the National Training Initiative, and more information will be shared. You can visit the BTMI's Facebook page. You can also visit the BHTA's Facebook page for future information on that initiative. But we've had past sessions that dealt with COVID. We've dealt with safe workspaces, personal finances, surfing the winds of change. And then we'll have one more session on Friday at 5 p.m. right here again that will deal with mental and physical health. So please tune in for that one as well. I'm sure now that you've listened to Norma's session, I'm sure you have many thoughts that come to mind and ways how you can change your leadership style, how you can modify your leadership style, and how you can just improve your leadership style. Remember words like supporting team members, coaching, communication, support, resilience, and the key word for me was empathy. So you must remember those words. And just in closing, I just want to say, remember this quotation: the ability to learn is the most important quality that a leader can have. So it's never too late to learn. As Norma said, you can plant a tree today. So you can learn today and you can learn in the future. So you can all improve your leadership skills and become better and help create a better Barbados going forward. So thank you very much. Kathy will now give us the last closing remarks, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday. Thank you.
Well, I think you've summed it up quite well for us there, Gail. I would just say thank you again, Norma. A very insightful presentation. I hope that the team, well, from the feedback we're seeing, persons have said, our last comment here is thank you very much. Your work is greatly appreciated. So I'd just like to say thank you for that. Thanks to the technical team in the background who made this evening's presentation possible. Jamelia from the BHTA and Tanisha from the BTMI. And we definitely will look forward to seeing you for the final session of the webinar series on Friday. Thank you again, and everyone have a good evening.
Thank you. you come